Let me tell you three things that drive the world. It's geopolitics, geostrategy, and the global economy. When we talk about global and geopolitics, it's all about power play, it's about strategies, it's about dominance, it's about leadership, legacies, and quite a lot about rising and falling economies as well. So in the East, we have China, which is abrasively rising. In the West is fighting with its own corona pandemic and is trying to get back its economies on track. The Middle East is embroiled in its own deadly xenophobic existence. Southeast Asia is struggling to retain its sovereignty against China. There are emerging alliances despite interdependencies juxtaposed with the isolationist tendencies amongst nations. What's India's position? How is India going to play out of all this? And so much more about Indian subcontinent as well. Hello and welcome. I'm Preeti and I'm joined with Dr. Awaad on this show of mine, who's from Delhi. He's a West Asia expert and he's an international journalist of Syrian origin. Welcome, Dr. Awaad, to my show.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's start with your region first. Israel is in conflict again with Hamas, and it's been a bloody conflict again, which went on for 11 days. We saw Egypt brokering truce and peace. And after almost 11 days, we see America joining in, Biden sending his emissary, Blinken to Israel, and even followed by UK sending their emissary. A little too late. How do you see the Israel-Hamas conflict going from here? And what are the regional dynamics?
Thank you very much for having me in your show, Preeti. It's always a pleasure meeting you. And in fact, it is not Hamas against Israel or Israel against Hamas. The conflict goes down in history for more than a century, when the Zionist movement in Europe have decided to make a Jewish state inside Palestine. And prior to that, it is well known that it is a Palestine, it's not Israel. So during that time, we had the Ottoman Empire, and then during the Ottoman Empire, we had the Balfour Declaration, who have given by the Britain in 1917 that they wanted to declare a state for the Jewish people in Palestine. And ever since then, we have seen the migration of the Jewish who has been, prosecuted in Europe, who've been forced into Holocaust and all kinds of atrocities from 79 countries, while in the Arab world they were received, and even in the Islamic world where they were received and had safety shelter according to their own even assessment. They have never been prosecuted in the Arab world. And in fact, when they started migrating prior to the 1917, there were only 4,500 families, Jewish family, who are originally Arabs living in Palestine, among with the Palestinians who are Christians and also they were Muslims. So everybody was living in harmony. But the moment that colonial enclave wanted to be created, with the help of the colonist European, they have put all their efforts to make sure that they can create this state and get rid of the Jews in their own. It was Hitler who have started this, also helping in migrating when he signed the Havara Agreement with the Jewish Zionist movement, and he helped in pushing out all these countries back into Palestine. In 1973, we had the first ship of Israelis or the Jewish refugees into Palestine with the Zionists, with the Nazi flag, and the Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Al-Quds or Jerusalem, he sent a protest letter to Hitler. Why are you sending them to our country, changing the demography of Palestine? So all this have happened, and gradually 1947, Britain, when they have taken the mandate in 1922, occupied Palestine. They have occupied Palestine, and after that, they decided with the League of Nations that they stay for 10 years, and then they let the Palestinians decide their destiny. But having they promised the Jewish, that's what the story is all about. So there was an ethnic cleansing total destruction. And then they were saying that we are unable to solve this problem by other means, that Britain said that we have to take this one to the US Security, the United Nations, let them decide the future of Palestine. So we know that the Palestinians were at the receiving end until 1948, 1947, when there was a committee formed by the UN sent to Palestine to see what is happening inside Palestine, the Palestinian cause. It is their fact-finding mission. And they came up with the study, which was very clearly saying 65% are Arabs and 33% are Jews who have come. But the Jews only own 7% of total Palestine. So how can you divide the country into two as per the UN Charter, which is against the jurisdiction? They don't have jurisdiction system in the UN to give a country at the cost of another country. You created Israel in 1948 by the resolution to 181, and you wanted to create a two-state solution. You gave 55% to the minority Jews and 45% to the Arabs. So the Arab never accepted, the Palestinians never accepted. We went to the war, and we knew that the British, who have given the independence, they were the one who armed the Jewish organization who created the massacre and continue with that. So the ethnic cleansing, if you look at the map of Palestine, you will realize that what was prior to 1948 and what was what is currently now, what was called Palestine, it is now called Israel. So we can see who is the aggressor, who is the victim on this story. But I don't want to go into the detail of that. They have taken wars, and because of the war, Arab did not want peace with Israel, and they kept on taking one piece on piece. Anyway, history does not justify occupation. Occupation is an occupation, there's an international law. So during the years 1990, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, the American and rallied the whole world behind him that this is illegal occupation. So we told the American, if it is illegal, why not Palestine? They say, okay, we will liberate Kuwait, then we will liberate Palestine. We promise you. We will give, a cordial solution. So we went, all the Arabs went with the American to liberate Kuwait against Saddam Hussein, and the war was on, Second Gulf War, and he was defeated, the Kuwait was liberated. Then they sent us to Oslo Agreement. Oslo, the Madrid Agreement was decided among the Arab nations with Israel that we should go for peace with Israel. Land for peace, which means that Israel will give up the land they have occupied to have peace with the Arabs. So that was the decision. So we went round table, then we had Oslo Agreement, then we had Wadi Araba Agreement. So all this agreement was a piecemeal breaking. That means they were not looking for a total peace with the Arabs. So Oslo Agreement came. Arafat himself, the late president of PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, he has given 78% of historical Palestine to the Israelis. He recognized them, hoping that the Israeli will allow him to make his own homeland at 22% of Palestine. So the moment he agreed and signed the Oslo Agreement, then gradually Ariel Sharon came, the right-wing party in Israel have taken over. People in Israel were 55% willing to have peace with the Arabs. Then gradually over the years with the right wing, then Netanyahu came, there was no peace. There remained 10 to 15% only of the total Jewish in Israel who wanted to have peace with the Arabs. So therefore you can see the picture, the grim picture of what's happening all over the years. Now Israel have taken most of Palestine. It's only remained of Jerusalem part, which American president have given them the ground that this has become an eternal capital of Israel. And then the provocation started there, because at the end of the day, Israel wanted to Judaize the whole of Jerusalem. They wanted to make it as a unified capital for Israel only, and nothing for the Palestinians. So they interfere into the issues of the Sheikh al-Jarrah enclave inside East Jerusalem, because they wanted to kick the Arabs from there, the Palestinian Arabs who are Muslim there, and they wanted to bring the Jew settlers who have built up hundreds, thousands of settlements. From 125,000 settlers to 85,000 settlers after Oslo Agreement. You can see the demographic changes in the mindset of the Jewish and the right wing who have taken over. So we have lost, and then they start attacking people in the holiest mosque. So Hamas told Netanyahu that if you don't stop this, we will retaliate. So they retaliate, he provoked, they retaliate, and then he changed the vision of the world. From Jerusalem, he went to take you to Hamas. So become Hamas Israel. It's not Hamas Israel. Because now the ceasefire is there you talked about. Ceasefire of what? One-way war. No, it doesn't matter if Hamas fires. Hamas fire, they are also fire at them in retaliation. They were fighting but that one used the maximum power You have the machines, you open the killing machines in every part of Gaza and you kill people. So all this now, the ceasefire is there, but yet the problem of Sheikh al-Jarrah and Jerusalem still exists. We have more, arrests. We have more of settlers are threatening the Arab. The whole colony is besieged. So therefore, the issue I'm trying to say here, if you want peace with the Arab in the Palestinian-Israeli issue, you have to go by the UN Security Council resolution, which speak of two-state solution. How this two-state solution will happen, I don't know. But let them decide the future, whether there will be unified Palestine, whether the Palestinians who have been kicked off their country can come back. All these issues that they should be discussing, and they have been discussing it for the last 73 years. It is, finally, I just give you a word. It is a shame on the United Nations that they were not able to give the Palestinians their right till date, because they were the one responsible for breaking Palestine into two states.
There is a view quite in talking just now that that why is a two-state solution not possible? Because even if you see in India, there are various communities that are living together and living together peacefully. So how do you see that a two-state solution is possible or not possible?
So this is what I'm trying to bring for you, the map. I just wanted to show you the map of the green map. That was the actual Palestine prior to 1947, where you can see the green color was Palestinian and the white dots were the Jew. So 1948, the second map is by where the UN has divided it into two. So the white become Israel and the green become Palestine. 1967 war, Israel annexed the West Bank, Jerusalem and Gaza. So this is the map become. And after that, gradually, this is what remain of Palestine. The green dot become Palestinian and the remaining will remain of whole of Israel. So Israel changed its policy over the years, that they wanted to create ghettos and, appetite wall they have grown up inside. Like the people of the same village cannot go and see each other. They have to climb the wall or walk away from them, because he wanted to pave a way for the settlers to take over. So therefore, they knew that there is no two-state solution. Israel will never agree to two-state solution. They will never give up the Palestinian land to the Palestinian people. This is what the problem lies here. That is why we said it is there under occupation. It's a colonization of the Palestinian. We have 1.6 million Palestinians who agreed to take the Israeli identity, by the way, who is having the Israeli identity in 1948 people. And these people are considered as second and third citizens. They never been considered first state citizens. A settler can come and take.
Yeah. So you were saying something, sir.
So I was just saying that, Israel never wanted to have a two-state solution. Let's understand this. The moment you decided to annihilate the whole of Palestine, and now you are facing difficulties with the remaining Palestinian inside Palestine, and also with the Gaza people, where there are 2 million there and 1.6 million inside Palestine. So it's very difficult. Gradually, they have done the maximum. Now they are trying, so they are using more atrocities to expel the Palestinians. So Israel will never seen a two-state solution is the ultimatum. That's why we may think of also one-state solution. It is possible if we start thinking in a democratic Palestine. In a democratic Palestine, where you will allow the refugees of Palestinians to come back to their homeland, where there are more than 6 million Palestinians now. When they were 1948, around 350,000 were kicked out. Now they become 5 to 6 million people. So where they will live? So they have to have the right to return. There has to be some kind of a reconciliation among the Jews and the Palestinian, Christian and Muslim, and they can live in peace. And I think that is the only solution, because Israel cannot survive as a Jewish state only for the Jew, because it's impossible. Nor they can change the Islamic and the Christian color of the Jerusalem, at least, because Jerusalem is now where the heat is up, because it's an international, acclaimed city. Even during the time of the partition, they always put Jerusalem under international governance. So it shows the sensitivity for Christianity, for Islam, and for Judaism. So all these things has to be taken into consideration. Two-state solution may not sound very viable at this stage.
Okay. Now, I want to talk a little about Iran. After the sanctions, Iran is now again in talks with the US. There are ongoing talks on JCPOA. Iran has also signed a trade deal with China. How do you think Iran is going to play out its cards to assert itself in the region and globally?
Well, let's understand that Iran, till the Shah of Iran, 1979, when he was toppled, it was the dog, the watching dog for the U.S. policy and interest in the Gulf and the Persian Gulf. They had the strongest army, the 12th strongest army in the world. America have poured in. It was a regional power. They helped Iran its nuclear plants. France, Germany, England, US, everybody was helping in Iran because they had the money and they had the resources and they had the public, the critical mass. So after the Shah was toppled and the Islamic Revolution has come, what Iran have done, have removed the Israelis, they recognized the Palestinian, they gave an Israeli, closed the Israeli embassy and they had the Palestinian embassy there. So become immediately anti-American, anti-Israel policy, where they have started immediately, they have pushed Iran into a war with Iran. Saddam Hussein has launched the war, supported by the Gulf countries, supported by the United States and the West, because they thought that the new government or new regime in Iran would be falling apart because of the Shah and because of the killing and the army in a mess. So they thought that he can succeed and he can destabilize. So they went for 8 years of war, totally destroyed. So the Iranians learned the hard lessons not to trust neither the West nor the United States in any future plan. So they start building their society. They were under sanction. And ironically, it was Israel and the United States who have led the world in boycotting Iran. It was the two only countries who have sold Iranian arms during the war with Iran. You remember the Iran Gate, where they sold and the American made money and took to fund the Contras, the anti-communism forces in Nicaragua. It is a known story. So Iran has decided to remain as a regional power. So Iran is a regional power to reckon with. Its geopolitical importance is very important. You have Strait of Hormuz, where you have 34% of the global trade and oil come from there, where 60% of India and Asia oil come from that passage. So everything is quite important. Then the Americans realized that the only way to change the regime or to change the government in Iran within the government. They failed. They went into nuclear deal with them, with the Europeans, and after painful discussion for years with the Iranians, they came up with the agreement, which was considered to be one of the best agreements according to even the International Nuclear Agency, what they have said. And in scientists, you ask anybody that this will always tie the hands of Iran. They will never be able to have a nuclear bomb. That was the deal to that extent. So when Obama signed it, America agreed to it, 6 plus P5 plus 1, that's Germany. So then they removed the sanction on Iran. But the moment Trump has come to power, he wanted to clear the legacy, waive or erase the legacy of Obama, of anything Obama did. Anything Obama, he made anti-Obama policy. That's, how the mess he created, even internationally, about his foreign policy and pulling out from international organization agreements, all on the basis because that he said America first policy. So if you have already honored an international agreement and you are already agreed to the terms and conditions and you are happy to sign and the rest of the countries sign with you, how can you pull out of it? There is no question. There is no legality to the matter. There is no prima facie. What is why if you are able to come back to WHO, you are ready to the World Trade Organization, you are ready to come back to UN, or you wanted to come back to TAB, whatever agreement you are on, why can't you go back to Iranian agreement? So the question here is America pulled, not the Iranians. So they told them, you pull, we'll come back. So Iran now, their reapproachment with Iran is already the European made pressure on President Joe Biden that, look, this is the only best deal for us out. Otherwise, Iran will go nuclear. And then we have to stop the Iranians from that. So that is how the American now reapproaching, and the talks in Geneva, where the talk some progress has been happening. We all know that there is now some sense of freedom that the American will come back to the status quo of 2015, the agreement they have signed. So they may left up the sanction on Iran. Then we can see some kind of reapproachment and some kind of tranquility in the region if this happens, because Iran comes. Israel is not happy at all with this new arrangement. They are worried about the Iranians. They don't trust them. But trust me, at the end of the day, the deal will be good for the stability in West Asia.
And what do you say? What do you have to say about the Iran's tilting towards China, for that matter?
See, when you corner your party, you are having sanctions from them. The people, if you have the resources, you have the people who wanted to buy, definitely you look for another buyer. For years, Iran have been dealing with the Europeans and with the Americans. And then they like Russia, how much they put pressure on Russia. So therefore, there is a new alignment. You wanted where your people should not suffer. Is the economic sanction in any country? It's a kind of terrorism. And that is, I agree with even anybody say, because my country, Syria, is also under terrorism, under the Caesar law. So how can you, of course, the government will not suffer. It's the people who are suffering. So what are you trying to do, to achieve by putting this economic sanction? So they found the Chinese, and Chinese already having their BRI, which is their Belt Road Initiative by leader Xi. They wanted to have, and Iran is one of the great important for north-south, trans-Asian, Euro-Asia pipelines and all, and even the maritime, and even the maritime or even the Silk Route. So they wanted to give the maximum to them, because American putting pressure on their president. By the way, why they are putting pressure on them? Because it's the American companies are losing. That is what the deal is all about. If you look at the commonality between US and Iran, you will find so much things in common, their interests. But because of Israel angle, that the Americans are hijacked by the Israeli lobby, they are unable to open up to Iran. That is why Biden, when he came, he told Netanyahu to shut up and let me do my job. I am going to bring back the deal. This is one of my manifesto promise, that I wanted to bring back the deal into the table. That's what my allies are saying. Though you may like it or may not like it. So going to China, that is why the Americans are telling the Iranian, open up, give us some company, give us some incentive. We will lift up the sanction. Iran is saying we will remove all the sanction or nothing. We have done, we honored it. You did not honor. So come back. So the ball is in the American court.
Okay, so was Trump a kind of a game spoiler in this Iran issue?
He was not only in Iran issue, in many international issues. In fact, he ridiculed America as a superpower. You see the way he was handling America. We all laughed at the American democracy. We have always been the champion of democracy, upholding freedom, democracy, freedom of speech, fighting all over the world, whether it's a proxy, whether it's true, we don't know. But suddenly you find some people pouring into the White House or putting into the Capitol Hill. My God, this was very strange. And even the leader, he never respected any leader. I think the American, society was needing some kind of a president like this to be in office to give different perspective. And he almost took the country into a civil war. So therefore, he has done lots of damage. What President Biden is doing currently is actually trying to reassure the allies, that America is still a respectable power. It's still the superpower militarily, at least, and we can also come back and reassure our allies and reposition ourselves. But the positioning of the United States is very much going to be different from the unipolar world where Trump was enjoying with his own administration. Now, America has to face the multipolar world in more difficult time, and their economy is bad. COVID-19 have destroyed the American trust in any administration. So Trump is a dark face of the American history, and I think he was an exception.
Now, moving over to Afghanistan, Dr. Awaad, where do you think Afghanistan is heading once the US troops are pulled out from there? Do you see Taliban coming to power, and kind of the terrorist organization of what Taliban is, taking over the place and then affecting the entire region? The entire region is going to be affected by that.
Absolutely. This is very important, not only for Afghanistan, but for India, for South Asia, for the rest of the world. In fact, we should not see Afghanistan development in isolation. And I don't see any of the cases in isolation, Preeti. We need to see it from the global perspective. How do you set your geopolitically important? Afghanistan has been one of the most important states for many country, even for the United States, for entering into CIS country, where they have been able to use the Taliban, use the terrorists as a tool to achieve their objectives, political objectives. And they said it. We did it. We brought down the Soviet Union. We broke it up. So they are the one who brought terrorism into Afghanistan. Bin Laden was paraded in the front page of New York Times and all. They were saying to them that this is our hero, the veteran, and then suddenly he becomes the terrorist. So we don't know when they're calling some good terrorists and bad terrorists. That is the problem of the American foreign policy. So we needed to see how America sees Afghanistan. What happened in Syria and in Iraq, you have seen the ISIS came, you have seen that Al-Qaeda flourished in both the countries. And then suddenly we hear, after we defeated Daesh, we hear that stories of that siphoning more than 5,000 ISIS terrorists into Afghanistan by American flight and giving them weapons. So what does it indicate to you when America suddenly want to move? I mean, America and ISAF forces, more than 175,000 troops were in Afghanistan. They failed even to protect the capital. So if you are suddenly pulling, suddenly now, so there must be something on the air where you are trying to bring back or revitalize the terrorism as a tool, because you say you found that terrorism is a good tool to use. So I think we have to fasten our belts. We have to ensure that Afghanistan remains stable and safety and integrity of Afghanistan remain. And also the Taliban, even if they have the majority Pashtun behind them, they should also come in terms with the constitution of Afghanistan. You may change it, but you should look at the visionary. There should be some wise leader within the region who are able to bring back the peace into Afghanistan and ensure that terrorism does not come back. Because if terrorism comes, if this breakup, it will be held out for India, for the rest of Asia, for China, even for the CIS country, and there is no prospect. So no prosperity here. So it is a matter of concern. American pulling all of a sudden, there has something to do with the families of the American Marines whom they want to pull. But come on, they wanted the military bases at the end of the day. They are not going to leave in a hurry. There has to be some kind of American presence, because the future plan is not Afghanistan. The future is Russia. The future is China. So having some kind of a source of a military base all over the world, that's to counter China. America wanted to concentrate more in Asia Pacific, but at the same time, wanted to remain some kind of a boots in the ground where they can use it as a military base for the future.
Okay, now moving on to China. China has been quite a upsetter and game changer in a way with Wuhan virus, everywhere around. So there are two questions to this. One is, China has China unleashed corona as a bioweapon? This is one question, because scientists have been speaking, and the entire international community has been talking about it, and there are a lot of investigations going on, whether it was a lab originated or it was a man-made virus. So why do you think China did this, and now what is it going to aim after all this, And the second part is the expansionist policy of China. Now, almost the southeast portion is all, threatened by China at its borders, whether it is India or it is, even if you take Taiwan and Hong Kong, they are also fighting against China for their own sovereignty. So this is the second question. What about this China dream of becoming a superpower and controlling this area at least?
Well, I think these are two questions. Even PhD scholars will take years to give you the answers in detail. But let me sum it up in my own understanding. Because we in Asia, we in the Middle East love to the conspiracy theory. I'm not giving a clean chit to the Chinese. Definitely, there is something that they have to be accountable to. They have to give to the world what is the Wuhan virus, how did this virus came up. But let us remember also, there is 8 countries in the world, including the United States, Britain, US, UK, France, Germany, and Israel, and Russia, and China, who is doing biological wars. That is, we know. They coordinate, they make themselves, and we know this is happening. Wuhan Institute have been funded by the French, they're funded by the United States. Even the United States have even acknowledged by President Trump that they have given the data of the coronavirus to the Chinese, along with the $4 to $5 million payment, that they continue the investigation there, and this continues. So I think it's a conflict of between the scientists and between the politics. If we wanted to politicize the issue, it depends on which camp you are. If you are an anti-China policy, definitely you will go with Trump. You will say Wuhan virus, Wuhan virus. If we are with the Chinese, we'll say, okay, wait and see. Yes, it is origin, but we may not. So I'm trying to say here, let the scientists find out, let the investigation take its own course. Let us listen to what the scientists say. This virus has become very devious and has developed and mutated more than 12,000 to 700, 13,000 times. It has been killing all over the world. It's not even selecting one group of humans. It's all the human being again. Humanity is in danger. So at this stage, we need collectively to work together to find out, at least to fight this pandemic, and then also to find out who is behind this virus. And that later stage comes up. According to, as per the Chinese expansion, China have used its soft power policy. Look, in China for 40 years, the European and the American have been enjoying the investment in China. They have taken lavishly enough money. They have created, they have done everything they want, investment and all. But did the Chinese government change? Did the PLA change? It was the same. But when China rise, it's become dangerous because their interest is a danger. The American interest is danger. They are competing with their American company. They are competing with the European company. They have the money. They have the surplus. So if China becomes the hub center economically, we cannot deny, we cannot ignore. It has to be taken, a force to reckon with. Even the United States knows that it is China who is leading the world economically. America is still the main sole superpower. But the Chinese use the soft power. They have a Silk Route, which is at $1 trillion, 120 countries, 65 main countries will be in total investment inside on the road. So all this $950 million of investment will be throughout. So therefore, they use their policy, either a vaccine policy, or they have used their money matter, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in your neighborhood, whether it's throughout the road to Eurasia, to Europe. It is all the countries they have trying to invest into this road, Silk Route, and also in the maritime through Africa and to Bab el-Mandeb and going to Red Sea into the Mediterranean. So they have been doing their policy. They wanted to establish themselves. This is the chain. This is the Asian century, and they have been doing it. But they also did not recognize or acknowledge the sovereignty of other nations and the sensitivity of country like India, where India feel that they have been cheated by the Chinese once, that they took them to the war and they cannot take them again to the war. So India was sleeping at the border peacefully, suddenly wanted to also develop the infrastructure of the Himalayas as much as the Chinese are doing. So India also starts moving into that side where the Chinese felt they have been provoked, or there is some kind of tilting from the Indian toward the American camps, where India always say, I'm not either with this or this with this. I'm looking at my integrity and India pragmatism in its own in sovereign independent foreign policy. But the Chinese created problem not only here. They created problem in Africa. They created problem in different countries. It is now public also opinion have been changing. I don't want to give them to say that everywhere is a rosy picture. Yeah, there are rosy pictures. There are countries benefiting a lot from the Chinese, by the way. And every country, including Syria, including Iran, all the countries falling. But here you have, it's a conflict of interest. It's the big power game. It's the big power games which is playing. It's not us. We are just a pawn inside the chess game they are playing. You can see the way they are handling issues. America is countering any move by China. So the Chinese understand that the Americans are finding an alternative route to their own road, which they are trying. So that is why they're promoting north-south corridors, different from the Chinese one. But at the same time, most of the countries also fall in the line of the Chinese, which have influence, including Iran, or the United States trying to bring them back into their camp. So there is a new alignment. So China, understanding that the soft power policy is being yielding for some fruit in certain countries, finding it very difficult in certain countries. And I think that conflict of interest between the superpower may not give that rosy picture ahead for the Chinese. That is why we need to understand, even China has to understand that Asian century is not meant for China. Everybody. I remember when we were with the Prime Minister, former late Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when we were in 2003 in Beijing, he said to them that the world can fit into India and China. But that is the picture India was trying to give, that if you grow, we will grow on equal footing. So, but then if you have expansion or you have some different attitude toward our own border, then also we will show you our red eye. So I think there where the Chinese now start maybe a little reasonable in trying to understand the sentiment of the people, especially a country like India, and they have to realize that the world is after the Chinese. But believe me, they are coming in a very big wave. And this giant has been awakened in Asia and is very difficult to stop. So let's see who will go in the Chinese camp, who will go into the American camp, or whether the American will sit across the table and discuss with the Chinese how to dominate, how to divide this world for their own interest is yet to come. Let the international world order reshape, and they will come to know where every country is taking itself.
Mhm. Now, moving on to Indo-Pacific, Dr. Awaad. That's the new theater of geopolitics these days. And there's presence of major powers there asserting their freedom of navigation in whichever way they feel like. Uh, in this context, is Quad the new Asian NATO, as has been called by the foreign minister of Russia, Mr. Lavrov, on his visit to India? Um, Russia and China also are getting too close to each other. Uh, are there signs of new blocks building, countering US? And how do you see the relevance of Quad here?
That's exactly what I finished my last answer. I'll continue from where I stopped. The fact of the matter is the United States feels that its own war, next war is China. And now most of the majority of the American public now favoring 55% of the public that look at China as an enemy. And that's where the Chinese are looked by the American eyes, especially Joe Biden. He's trying to harden his position toward China, calling Wuhan a virus, calling them that they are behind, opening the probe again, having a war trade with them, with the Chinese, opening this topic, trying to reassure the alliance in the Asia Pacific that the United States is still the superpower and freedom of maritime navigation has been taking place. You know, you could see the American now moving in, and they're trying to tell the Chinese that this is not the way. We will move anywhere we can move. Either it is in Taiwan Strait, or whether it is in Hong Kong, whether it's in the South Pacific Island or in the South China Sea, everything that the American wanted to tell the Chinese. But there is a sensitivity because America also like to ship or like to, fish in the turbulent water. They will not go for a war with the Chinese. They always look for a proxy, and they always look for an alliance. So therefore, they're looking for a new alliance in the region. They wanted something in the country where having rift with China, like Philippines, like Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, South Korea. All these fall in the American camp, but they're also sensitive to anger China. So therefore, America trying to put pressure, build up new alliances to see that China size and hegemony, it can be contained by the American and their allies. Quad in its own was there for years. It was already there doing for it, especially during tsunami, that it is disastrous. The whole idea was there. But because of the problem between India and China on the Himalayas, have brought back this topic. It looks like that it become a counter-China policy. And China, on its part, become India-centric policy, which is that you can hurt me here, I can hurt you in your neighborhood. So therefore, it's understood the game plan, So I think Quad, it will take years to shape. But you can see China is not going to give up very easy on that. Nor the allies of the United States, like Japan. Even Japan will not go full to the American camp. They know that it's neighbor. After all, it's the neighbor. You can't just dictate me what to do. But America knows that this is their war. This is their interest, and they will fight for it as much as the Chinese fighting for their dominance in this part of the world. That's why you see America have pulled out from the nuclear agreement with the former Soviet Union and Russia. They wanted to include the Chinese into the START agreement too and all. But you realize that we are heading for a Cold War. And if we are heading for a Cold War, that means the Americans have already used it against the Soviet Union. And during those days, actually, if you read history properly, it was the Chinese who helped the Americans. being the superpower in the world. By the way, it is the Soviet Union which had the problem with the Chinese, and immediately when they broke, we saw Nixon 1971 visiting China, opening with the China, recognizing one China policy, putting it on the table, and that's how they started. So look at the history. Second World War, America won because of the Chinese. Now, the Chinese, after 40 years or 50 years of investment by the West and the United States, they become a superpower. They don't want it to be a superpower. So it's a conflict of interest. We are seeing ourselves at these, we don't know which side we are going, because it is at the end of the day, it is China versus the United States. It is United States and allies versus China and Russia. So how the new alliance will take place, which country will fall in which part, I think it's time to come. If we're heading for a Cold War, then we may head for Star Wars in the future, and assertiveness of everybody dominance will be very much on the ground, whether it's in the Asia Pacific, whether it's in the Indian Ocean, where it is there. Because after all, everybody wants to safeguard its own interest. And I think unless and until the international power, the pyramid of the superpower or the hierarchy of it has to be that the superpower agrees in terms of sharing interests together, finding commonality, then we can see how this world can be governed. And unless and until the new international world order really gets shaped, we are going to see lots of proxy wars, proxies interest. Look at Africa, what happened. Look at the Arab country, what happened. If you look at Iraq, you look at Libya, you look at Sudan, you know where the Russian and the Chinese maximum and Indian maximum interests were there, have been taken by the European and have been taken by the United States. So you must understand also that it's in the long run, in the long term, India interest lies in its Asian roots with its neighbor. And strategically thinking, I'm not talking of tactically. It is with the Russian. It is also with the Chinese. It's nothing to do with the American. But Americans follow their own interests. They don't care. They don't care. No permanent friend, no permanent enemy. It is permanent interest.
Now, if we shift our focus to India, so do you see, Dr. Awaad, how do you see Indian politics these days, and do you see an ideological shift that may be affecting our image in the world, and how is the world seeing India with this ideological shift?
I see India as a very interesting story for the rest of the world. We have seen India and the non-aligned movement, champion of the freedom of anti-colonial movement, which have taken place post-Second World War. And then we have seen countries gaining independence, fighting apartheid. So India was standing on its own. India is also a victim of colonization, partition taking place because of this. So India starts moving ahead with different way. And the image of India over the years, I mean, 4 decades of living in India, I can tell you with conviction that image has changed. At least for the last 20 years, we have seen India gaining international global respect. India become hubs of the investment and destination after the political and economic reforms in the early 1990s. And then we start seeing India changing the map of the world on this. And a multipolar society, fully diversified and all. So now you have a government which is looked at as a nationalist government, which is seen as a right-wing, or people call it, but that's the reality of things, because it's the majority, is a democracy. You elect whom you want. So that's how you say you are the largest democracy in the world. But the image of India has changed, even with the right-wing party on power, even with the nationalist BJP or the right-wing, whatever you want to call them. How we see them is a power to reckon with, and they are there to stay for long years, because they know that the Indian public are still popular despite all the problems Prime Minister having. He is still popular among the people. So Indian image have been improving respectively in the world, and India calling for its own space in the international affairs. But because of COVID, because of the new development, tarnished the image totally. You know, India, which have for the last 20 years didn't have a begging plate to take out, they were having the surplus and giving to the world. Suddenly we see that India is at need. At this time where India have given 150 countries in the world their vaccine, and then 65 million doses are being given. And suddenly India now asking the world to come and rescue them. So, and that part, yes, I will say India's image has changed. Prime Minister himself have gone to the Arab world. He's been awarded the top Waiel Award by all the president of and the sheikh and the king of the Arab countries whenever he goes. So it doesn't matter whether you are a right wing or whether you're a secular, whether it is how it is. They look how your pragmatism, your realism in your foreign policy is doing. If you, India, remain as a popular society, as a diversified power, and respect all the human rights and the issues of minorities in India, trust me, issues everybody in Bay India growing. India should not see itself in anybody's camp. India has unique in its own policy, and I always advocate of this kind of independent foreign policy. You need the world needs India. How need more India than the world? You can so it's not one-way take. It's a two-way take. So you need to see India has to see its own interest to build up its own. I think it is a little bit difficult time, but I believe whatever is the development inside India, there has to be the future governing and the future looking into international issues has to take more deeper thinking and thought among the decision maker in India to ensure that the foreign policy of India remain independent and the walking delicacy on the line of alliances with the minimum loss of your national interest. So I think that give me. That's how I feel more comfortable in saying, because it's difficult to be devil advocate in a country where you're living and watching. But at the same time, you feel that there are some certain changes because we watch what the international media report about India. So you need lots of things. You need to fix your house in order before you really be the major power. And I think it's not far away that India can take. It will take some time, but they are very slow pace. It will come back. And India, believe me, people say they've changed its position. Trust me, there is nobody change of position. It's just the way you look at it, the way you may feel that this is where your interests lie. And I think the interest of India lies in its deep cultural, civilized, historical ties with the country, more than, a face of a cosmetic face to improve your image and any other country at the cost of the other. That's what makes India kept an equidistance among all nations, have kept the respect of everybody. That's why everybody wants India for either political solutions or either for economic development. Even most of the Arab countries, most of the world want to invest in India. And they're seeing India as a countering to China, by the way. They don't see India as only a competitor to the Chinese, but because there is a trust of a democratic society as a democratic India more than the other countries. So I think it has an image, has to be built up on that image, and India, I'm sure gradually they will be able to come back into the same track.
Okay. Now, my final question, Dr. Awaad, is about your own country. Syria has just had its elections, and President Assad is well back as the president. There was no opposition as such. Am I right? So why hold elections only when President Assad has to come back again?
We had three candidates. Actually, Assad was one of the candidates. We had the other two candidates also there. The constitution have given the right of the people to stand. We had more than, I think, 55 people on the race to the president when they scrutinized their paper and all. So we had remained only with the three. But I would say that Syria also geopolitical location made it a very interesting for the world to have everybody want a piece of the Syrian. When the cow falls, everybody take his knife to take his part of the flesh to himself. That's the saying. So Syria location in the center of, between the meeting point between Africa and Europe and Asia, it has made it one of the most important routes on the map of the Silk Route during history. So, and they discover oil and gas in the Mediterranean, where 2/3 of the gas is the Syrian side. So then you can understand why everybody wants to be involved in the Syrian affair. So Syria, they have been, even American acknowledged that they have failed in the regime change policy against the Syrian government. They have started, they have said we failed. Gulf country, Qatar himself, the former Prime Minister of Qatar, foreign minister, he was Hamad bin Jassim, said we were forced to pay $137 billion by the American and the West to trouble the Syrian government, to trouble President Assad, and to change the regime change, but we failed, despite we have sent so many mercenaries, and you know how much they spend in 83 nationalities, 173,000 terrorists have come through Turkey, which has turned into a Pakistan in the making, and opened the border with all the infrastructure. The terrorist organization came to Syria and Iraq, and Turkey is still acting as the hub center for all the terrorist Muslim Brotherhood and political Islam. We know the Turkish Empire in this. So therefore, Syrian people have recognized that 10 years of harsh war on Syria have noticed that we have been vindicated in our position of supporting the president. Why he is popular? Because the people of Syria are popular. They love him, the people of Syria. The army love him. People say it's a sectarian. I don't see any sectarian. If you want to speak on terms of communal, 5% of the army are Sunni. 5% is the Shia on the other sect of Syria. The population of Syria is 85% are Sunni. Why they are supporting him? So, but we are different kind of a moderate Sunni. We are not Wahhabi. We are not Takfiri. We are not Salafi. We do not want. We do not have a political religious party in the constitution. Does not allow. You can be an individual as you follow any religion you want, but nothing to do with politics. So our secular constitution is not making everybody displease everybody. So to break up Syria, to make the interest, American interest in the region is the oil and Israel dominance. So oil is already they secured. Israel dominance, that's what they're doing. So if Syria remains strong, it will be problem for Israel. It will be problem for the because our territory under occupation by Israel. Golan is under occupation as per the international law. They have taken it by force. They have to give it back. So there is a war. There is Lebanon also, part of Lebanon is there. Hezbollah is fighting. Hamas is supporting. So the positioning of Syrian government, the recent war on Gaza have shown that if Syria have joined hands with the American camp, we wouldn't have had this problem. Because the American came and told us, you cut relation with Iran, you dismantle Hezbollah, stop your relation with Hamas, open your territories for our economy, open your country, and then you also have peace with Israel, forget about the Golan. If you said no, have we said yes, we didn't have a problem. Okay, so now you can understand what I'm trying to say. So when the people of Syria recognize that previous election during the wartime, it was 88% giving to the president. Now with this happening inside the Palestinian territory and the war, and they said, my God, Hamas and these people and Shia and Sunni together are getting the support of the Syrian government, and the leaders of the two communities are acknowledging this. How can we accuse our president of killing his own people? So therefore people supported him again and voted him for power. This constitution was given in 2012. It is now, he promised he will amend the constitution, he will do some amendment. Let's see, people of Syria hoping that he can make some changes. And that is why everybody in the street, if you watch the Syrian TV, you watch the Syrian people, talk to any Syrian, by the way, you will see that they voluntarily, they have come out in the street before election, during election, and after the election. Till now, they are in the street celebrating and they're enjoying the president winning this election. And I think we are hoping that he will be able to make some changes, which will be good for the Syrian people, because we are under severe sanction. Our economy is in a very bad shape, sham. It is, the currency is down to earth. It is 400% inflation, 400% we lost the currency value. So imagine the harsh reality on the people, yet they still have the faith in their president, they will be able to do. So if we had international observers who were watching. We didn't want anybody from the enemy camps. I mean, how can I bring an American or a British or a French people or an Italian who have already supported the sponsored terrorists, send them to our country, and they refuse to take their own citizens, by the way. They refuse to take them. They say, kill them. But when we kill them, they say human rights issue, violating human rights. Then what do you want us to do with your own citizens? You don't want to take those terrorists, you send them to us? So how can we accept you to be a peace broker and invite you to come and monitor our election? The world have to recognize and realize that regime change policy started by the President Obama, and even Trump himself, he said that we have to stop this policy of regime change, and we are not, even Robert Ford, the former American ambassador to Syria, last ambassador, who was inciting people in the streets of Damascus, he said, we failed. We have to acknowledge that the Syrian president, Syrian people have won, the Syrian president have won, and we lost to trouble this regime. So let's do it in this way. We survived for 10,000 years. We will survive for another 10,000 years. That's how the Syrian people's spirit are. It's very high of a civilized people, and we do not want neither to change our way of life, nor we wanted to bring fanatics or radical elements into the power. We reject Wahhabism, terrorism, Salafist, any kind of form inside Syria. It has to be removed. I don't know how the future will lie. It all depends. If peace comes between Israel and the Arabs, it's a very good for all of us. If United States bring back Iran to their fold, then it will be good on Syria. So the future of Syria is still at stake, but it is the people of Syria voted. It is for the Syrian, by the Syrian, for the Syrians, and nobody should interfere about it. And that's where India actually stand the position by the adhere to the UN Charter, adhere to foreign intervention, no military intervention, and that is what the policy everybody should follow. India way of looking at the conflict in other nations, non-interference. Let the people of the country decide their destiny.
So if I was to be the devil's advocate here, and we can see increasing rulers, increasingly rulers perpetuating their rule in. So, for example, countries like China, where Xi Jinping has declared himself the lifelong president for CWC. In Russia, President Putin is again, he's been coming in and he's also kind of perpetuated his position there. Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, again, is a very, very despotic ruler, I suppose, and he's also assured that he stays there for a long time. Similarly, North Korea. So do you think Mr. Assad, President Assad, is kind of playing the same playbook?
See, anybody, whoever is like in the chair, if the people want him, nobody can change. But as I know, our constitution give him, this is his last chance to stand as the president. But if in the future, 7 years from now, they can change, they can amend the politics, I have no clue. But if I see that the people of Syria are happy with this development, let the people of the country decide. That's my take on this. I don't want to visualize or speculate about the future. Let the people, let his deeds of the people give really whether he was inspired to this public. Did you see the public of Syria in the streets? Did you see that our education is compulsory and free? And if you have a child between the age 5 to 7 years of age, and you don't send him to school, you go to jail. If you know that the free medication is there and ration card is given to family, even at this harsh time, even during the war, we parachuted the curriculum to the people under occupation by the American forces and Turkish forces and the terrorists. Still, we were able to survive. So that means there is a will, there is a steadfastness, there is a resistance to any kind of hegemony, and we'll definitely come back. And I don't know why people not lost faith in their president unless and until he has done something to the people and give them that kind of an assurances where they are able to stand again on their feet.
Okay. So you've talked so much. You've given great insights into so many things around the world, and it's been really enlightening talking to you, Dr. Awaad, about China, about Iran, about the Indian perspective as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Awaad, to be talking to me, and we'd love to have you again in some panel discussion with you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So viewers, if you liked the video and you think it's of great worth to everyone, please don't forget to like, share, and comment on my video. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.